Ah, this is the house for making babies. 10,000. Once you put them inside this house, they have to come out when they have babies. Because it's
You see, the courtship.
I was born in a village where stories travel faster than the wind, where every whisper carries the weight of generations. And ever since I was a little girl, I heard the women speak about that place, the small hidden house where life begins. They never described it fully. They never agreed on what truly happens inside. Some spoke with pride. Others with trembling voices. But all of them lowered their eyes when mentioning it. For years, I wondered why. What could exist in that house that makes even the strongest women of my tribe fall silent? On the morning of my ceremony, I finally understood that some secrets are not meant to be told, only lived. The air felt different the moment I woke up. The sun was softer than usual, as if it didn't want to disturb anything sacred. Outside my hut, the elder women were already waiting for me. Their faces were calm, but their eyes carried an old seriousness I had never seen before. They didn't need to speak. I knew it was time. They guided me to the river, where the water is cold and still. I removed my bracelets, my beads, everything that tied me to the girl I used to be. The elders rubbed my skin with red clay mixed with crushed leaves. The scent was earthy, strong, and older than our language. They painted symbols along my arms and across my chest, the symbols of fertility, of transition, of becoming. Nobody smiled. Nobody cried. Only the river spoke, whispering against the stones. When the painting was done, they covered my head with a cloth made from goat hide dyed in dark ochre. It meant I no longer belonged to my father's house. I was crossing, step by step, into a place where children are dreamed, chosen, and brought into the world. As we walked back toward the village, the people moved aside quietly. Men kept their heads lowered. Children watched me with wide, curious eyes, as if I were already someone new. Only one man was allowed to look at me directly, my husband. He waited near the old fig tree, wearing the ceremonial necklace carved by his father. When his eyes met mine through the cloth, I felt a strange mixture of fear and comfort. He offered his hand. I accepted it. Not because tradition demanded it, but because in that moment, I needed the warmth of something familiar. We began walking toward the path that leads out of the village. A narrow trail carved between tall grasses, rarely used except for ceremonies like this. The silence around us was deep, almost heavy. Even the birds seemed to keep their distance. My heart beat louder than our footsteps. Everyone says the path to the house of life is short, but it felt unbearably long. Each step pulled memories from me, the sound of my mother grinding millet, the laughter of my sisters, the voice of my grandmother telling stories under the moon. All of it slipped farther away with every breath, as though the world I knew was fading behind me. My husband didn't speak. He squeezed my hand gently from time to time, as if reminding me that I wasn't walking alone. Still, the weight of the moment pressed on both of us. I could feel it in the way he breathed, in the tension of his shoulders. This was not just a union of two people. It was the continuation of our bloodline, the expectation of our ancestors, the quiet hope of our entire village. As we walked, the landscape began to change. The trees became older, taller, their branches twisted as if shaped by ancient hands. The ground grew darker. The air smelled of sap and dry earth. This part of the forest is forbidden to children. Even adults walk through it only when they must. Nature itself seemed to watch us, not with malice, but with a kind of patient curiosity. Then, through the shadows, I saw it. The house of life. It wasn't grand or beautiful. It wasn't shining or decorated with colors. It was small, almost hidden, made of earth and wood. Its round shape blended with the ground as if it had grown there. The roof was covered with layers of woven grass. The doorway was low, carved with symbols I recognized from my grandmother's stories, spirals, circles, and the shapes of women with hands on their bellies. The house looked simple, but I felt its power immediately. Every woman in my family had walked toward this door. Every child in our village had begun their journey because of what happened behind those walls. And now it was my turn. My husband stopped beside me. For the first time that day, he let himself breathe deeply. He touched my arm, and I could feel his hand shaking just a little. Perhaps out of fear. Perhaps out of respect. Perhaps both. "I am here," he whispered. It was the only thing he was allowed to say before the ritual. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat felt too tight, full of questions and emotions I didn't yet understand. We stood there for a long moment, listening to the wind move through the tall grass. It felt like the world held its breath. Like the ancestors were watching. Like the ground beneath us remembered every couple who had stood where we stood now. Then, slowly, my husband guided me forward. My feet trembled, but I did not stop. I could not. Because every woman in my life had crossed this threshold, and survived it. Because the village expected me to continue our lineage. Because tradition, love, fear, hope, all of it converged into this single moment. As we approached the door, I felt a shiver rise up my spine. Not from cold. From understanding. Beyond this doorway, I would no longer be the girl who played by the river. I would no longer be the daughter of my mother. I would become something else, something sacred, something ancient, something the village had trusted me to become. My husband opened the door. Warm air rushed out, carrying the scent of burnt herbs and earth. I took a breath. And stepped inside. The moment I stepped inside the house, the outside world disappeared behind me. The door closed with a soft, hollow sound, and for a while, all I could hear was my own breathing, shallow, unsure, echoing faintly against the round clay walls. The air was warm, almost heavy. It smelled of burnt herbs, dried flowers, and earth that had been pressed by the hands of women over many generations. A thin stream of smoke curled upward from a small clay pot in the corner, drifting lazily through a narrow opening in the roof. The light that entered through that opening was dim and golden, falling in a circle on the floor as if the sun itself had been invited to witness what happened here. My grandmother once told me that this house remembers. That the walls absorb every whisper, every promise, every fear. Standing there, I understood what she meant. The silence felt alive. My husband closed the door behind us. This was the only place where no elder could interfere, no child could listen, no spirit, according to our traditions, could disturb. It was the only moment where the future of a family, of a lineage, was decided between two people alone. I took a step further and ran my hand along the curved wall. The surface was smooth, cool, and etched with faint markings. Names, symbols, perhaps prayers from women long gone. I couldn't read them, but I felt them. The center of the room held a woven mat covered with fresh palm leaves. A low wooden stool stood beside it, carved with the figure of a pregnant woman. Across from it, a tiny fire burned quietly, its flames barely touching the edges of the pot above it. That fire had been lit before I was born, tended by generations of mothers. It was said that letting it die would bring misfortune to the village. So it never died. Not once. My husband watched me carefully, not intruding. Men are taught from a young age that this moment belongs to the woman first, her spirit must enter the room before her body does. I breathed slowly, letting the warmth of the house wrap around me like a veil. And then I remembered what the elder women had told me. No matter who you become in this house, remember that you walk in carrying your ancestors. They stand behind you, and they stand with you. Those words steadied me. I turned toward my husband. His face was calm, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the hesitation in his hands. He was supposed to be strong, a protector, a provider. Yet here, in this sacred house, he was just as vulnerable as I was. Two souls entering a place older than both of us. He approached me slowly, careful not to break the silence. In the flickering light, I noticed he carried something wrapped in goat hide. It was the necklace of seeds, the one meant only for this moment. He unfolded the cloth and lifted the necklace gently, almost reverently. Each seed represented a life not yet lived. Each one was polished smooth by the hands of men who had worn it before him. Some seeds were darker, some lighter, but all had a soft shine, as if they held a small piece of the sun inside them. He placed the necklace around my neck. The seeds were cool at first, then warmed quickly against my skin. The weight was unfamiliar, but comforting. In our tribe, this necklace is not just an ornament. It is a vow. A promise that everything created inside this house will be protected outside of it, with strength, with loyalty, with life. We sat together on the palm leaves, the room quiet except for the tiny crackling of the fire. The smoke curled high above us like a thin, twisting ribbon. It made my eyes sting slightly, but the scent was grounding, a mixture of herbs chosen for new beginnings. I traced my fingers along the mat beneath me, realizing how many women must have sat here before me. Women who had laughed. Women who had cried. Women who had feared the same things I feared now. A part of me wanted to ask my husband if he felt nervous, if he understood the magnitude of this moment. But words seemed wrong here, like they would disturb something sacred. So instead, I listened. I listened to the fire. To the creaking of the wooden beams. To the faint murmur of the wind outside. To his breathing, steady, patient, quietly hopeful. Then, one of the rituals began. I picked up the small clay bowl the elders had placed in the corner. Inside it was a mixture of crushed herbs and powdered roots. My grandmother had shown me how to burn them, how to let the smoke carry my intentions to our ancestors. I fed the mixture into the fire. It hissed softly, releasing a scent that was sharp at first, then warm and sweet. It drifted around us in slow spirals, like invisible hands blessing the space. As the smoke rose, I felt myself sinking deeper into the moment, into the purpose of this house, into the history of it, into the quiet truth that nothing here was done without meaning. My husband leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You are not alone," he said. 4 simple words. But they grounded me more than any ritual. I touched his hand. It was warm, steady, calloused from years of work. The hand of a man who had grown up preparing for this moment just as I had, though in a different way. Men are taught to be strong, but also to be gentle here. In the house of life, strength without gentleness is forbidden. The fire crackled again, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to glow. The carvings on the wall appeared to move, casting long, dancing shadows. It felt like the ancestors themselves were watching, not as judges, but as witnesses. I felt a shift inside me. Not physical, something deeper. A recognition. This house was not built for fear. It was built for transformation. The girl who had walked through the forest was fading. A woman was emerging, a woman who carried both past and future inside her. I realized then that the fear I had been holding for so long was not meant to stop me. It was meant to prepare me, to make me aware of the importance of what we were about to create. My husband touched the necklace lightly, lifting one of the seeds between his fingers. "Whichever one chooses us," he murmured, "will be a child of blessed paths." I closed my eyes, letting his words settle around me like a soft cloak. The fire warmed our faces. The house breathed its ancient breath. And for the first time since entering, I felt something I did not expect. Peace. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of purpose. I opened my eyes and looked at my husband. He looked at me. And in that gaze, I understood why this place was sacred. Inside this house, 2 people didn't just come together. They crossed into something larger than themselves, into tradition, into legacy, into the quiet promise of a future child who would one day hear the same stories I had once heard. What truly happened next belonged only to us. But everything leading up to that moment, everything that shaped it, everything the house held in its silent, waiting walls, was the beginning of the story of who we would become together, and of who might come after us. When the door of the House of Life finally opened, the world outside felt unfamiliar, as if I had stepped into a place that looked like my village but moved with a different rhythm. The air was cooler than I remembered, carrying the scent of morning dew and distant smoke. The sky was painted with soft gold, and the first rays of sunlight stretched across the earth like gentle hands welcoming us back. For a moment, I simply stood in the doorway, unable to move. The night inside the house had changed something in me. Not just in the body, but in the way my spirit breathed. My husband stepped outside first, then turned and offered his hand. I hesitated, not because I feared his touch, but because crossing that threshold meant leaving behind a version of myself that would never exist again. Yet the world waits for no one, and tradition carries you whether you feel ready or not. I took his hand and stepped onto the earth. The forest around us seemed quieter than it had been the day before. The trees stood tall and unmoving, their branches still as if listening. Even the wind appeared to pause, observing us with the quiet dignity of something ancient. We began the walk back to the village, but the path felt different now. Yesterday, it had been narrow and intimidating, a tunnel of shadows that swallowed my courage with each step. Now, in the morning light, the same trees seemed softer. The same shadows seemed thinner. And the world that had once pressed on me now felt like it was breathing with me. I noticed the pressure in my chest easing with every step. I wasn't sure if I had changed the path, or if the path had changed me. My husband walked slightly ahead, his posture straight but relaxed. He didn't speak. Men were taught silence after the ceremony, out of respect for the transformation of the woman. But I could sense his pride in the way he held himself, in the way he glanced back from time to make sure I was still beside him. The moment the village came into view, my heart tightened again. Not with fear this time, but with anticipation. Word spreads fast in a place like ours. Even before we reached the first hut, I could see shadows moving, women rising from their mats, children running toward their mothers, elders straightening their backs. The village had been waiting for us. The first to approach were the elder women, their faces calm but glowing with an inner warmth. They looked at me with a depth that unsettled me, as if they could see beyond my skin into the quiet transformation that still pulsed inside me. One of them touched my arm gently. "You left as a daughter," she said. "Now you return as a bearer of tomorrow." Her voice was soft, but her words carried weight. The kind of weight you feel deep in your bones. Another elder placed a woven bracelet on my wrist, thin, delicate, made of fibers dyed deep red. It symbolized the possibility of life, not the certainty. It was a reminder that the journey had begun, not finished. As we continued into the heart of the village, a group of women formed a circle around me. They hummed low melodies, the kind sung only during harvesting, birthing, and sacred occasions. The sound vibrated through my chest, warm and soothing. I felt myself relax into their presence, held by a community of hands and voices. The children peeked from behind their mothers, whispering and giggling. To them, I was not the same woman they had seen 3 days ago. To them, I was now someone mysterious, someone carrying hidden stories in her eyes. My husband was led away by the men, who clapped his shoulders with pride. But even as he joined them, I could feel his presence orbiting mine, a silent reassurance that though our roles now shifted, we remained bound by what we had shared in that small, sacred house. The women guided me to the center of the village, where a bowl of warm water waited. They dipped their fingers into it and traced symbols on my forehead, my shoulders, my abdomen. These markings weren't meant to bless what had already happened, but to protect what might come. During this ritual, no one looked directly into my eyes. It was believed that the spirit of a future child hovered close after the ceremony, still choosing whether to enter the world through the woman. Meeting someone's gaze too soon might frighten it away. When they finished, they wrapped me in a cloth decorated with patterns reserved only for wives of my stage. The colors were earthy, deep browns and muted reds, but they carried a quiet power. As the cloth settled around my shoulders, I felt something shift again inside me. A settling. A grounding. I was no longer standing on the soil of my childhood. I was standing on the threshold of a new identity. Later, when the rituals ended and the crowd dispersed, I sat alone beneath the shade of the fig tree, the same tree where my husband had waited for me before the ceremony. The leaves rustled softly overhead, and a warm breeze brushed my cheek. I closed my eyes. In that stillness, I sensed something I hadn't felt before. It wasn't certainty. It wasn't fear. It was connection. To my mother. To her mother. To every woman who had walked into the house of life and walked out carrying the invisible mark of transformation. Their footsteps were now beneath my feet. Their stories were now tied to mine. When I opened my eyes, I saw my husband approaching me. He didn't speak, he wasn't supposed to, but he sat quietly beside me, leaving a respectful distance. He looked at me not with expectation, but with recognition. For the first time, I understood why the house of life was sacred. It wasn't because of what happened inside its walls. It was because of what happened after. The woman who leaves that house is never the same as the one who entered. She carries a new understanding of herself, of her role, of her connection to the lineage woven through time. As I sat under the fig tree, feeling the pulse of the morning, I knew this truth. I had returned to the same village. But I had not returned the same woman. The elders knew it. The children sensed it. My husband saw it. And deep in my chest, I felt it, a quiet, steady flame that hadn't been there before. Whether or not a child had chosen me yet, I could not say. But something had chosen me. Responsibility. Purpose. Legacy. And that alone changed everything. I rose from the ground, wrapped the cloth tighter around myself, and walked toward my home, no longer as a daughter, no longer as a girl, but as the woman I had become. The woman my tribe now called Mother of Tomorrow.